Okay, so I want to give you a bit of an update on what's happening with right to repair legislation here and around the world. Um, what I think has been apparent from a lot of the presentations and seeing the insights in the repair cafes is there are a lot of barriers to repair, and it's all about making repair easy and cheap to do. And if we do that, then more people will repair things. Um, and one of the barriers we've got is a lot of manufacturers don't really want us to repair because they want to sell more products. And right to repair legislation and the movement behind it is really trying to change that. So I'll go through and give you a bit of an overview. It'll be a very high level overview. There's a lot of detail in all of these legislations. So I'm going to keep it as promised to 10 minutes. So right to repair is essentially I can't remember if these are my words or I robbed them from somewhere, but I'm going to make them mine now. So basically, we own stuff, so it's up to us what we do with it. And all right to repair is saying we want the right to be able to do that. And because in a lot of cases, manufacturers and producers don't want us to do it, we need to have some legislation to force them, really. So really where we want to get to, a lot of the legislation has been around really complicated assemblies, technical devices, appliances, motor cars, because those are the things where we're seeing a lot of barriers to repairability. And really what we want to get to is if, for example, the screen on your phone breaks, we should be able to just pop the old screen out and replace it with a new one. As easy as that. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as that. And we see things like batteries that we know are going to fail get glued into place. Or in some cases, the vacuum cleaner in the top right there, the batteries are completely unreplaceable unless you've got really good soldering skills and you can desolder a circuit board to get to them. And the reason for that is because repair is actually a cost for manufacturers to provide, and it's impacting their bottom line. In a lot of cases, many of them just don't care about repair. So we see a lot of examples of this sort of thing. Manufacturers offering replacement warranties. They don't even want to offer repair. So if your product fails, you take it back to the manufacturer under warranty, they'll give you a new one. Everybody's happy, apart from they're then just going to throw that product into landfill. And on the other side of it, we get the other extreme case of manufacturers have actually tried to control repair. So Apple are a perfect example of this. Official providers, repair providers, get access to parts, tools, diagnostics, software. And if you want authorized, if you want official, there's not a lot you can do. It means Apple are really creating this entire ecosystem, not only around their products and the apps and everything that you can use on them, but also how you can repair them and how long you can keep them. And they're doing that because they're making money out of it and they don't want anybody else to get in on that game. So to make repair more ubiquitous, we need useful repair instructions, products that are easy to disassemble, and spare parts that are available and are available at a good cost. And these should be available to all owners and repairers, not just those that are deemed authorized. And that's sort of what we see in repair cafes, and that's what the right to repair movement is really trying to get. So July last year, Brigitte and the Repair Cafe were really the driving force behind a petition to get some right to repair legislation in Aotearoa. We petitioned the government, put that forward and presented it to David Parker and co in July last year. We asked for key changes to make repair easier, cheaper and more accessible for all New Zealanders. Since then, there's been some movement overseas. And in the US is a good example because there are not only lots of big tech companies, but they also have very few consumer laws that unlike our Consumer Rights, Consumer Guarantees Act, that actually protect partially our ability to do something like repair. There've been a lot of fight for right to repair laws over there for about a decade or so, but they've got very little traction until the end of last year. New York were the first state to look at right to repair for appliances and devices. The Digital Fair Repair Act passed two state houses unanimously in July last year, and then it sat with the governor for months awaiting sign-off. And the problem with that was it gave industry lobbyists plenty of time to get to work. They lobbied hard at the governor, and they managed to get the legislation severely watered down, to the point where many commentators actually think it's nearly useless as a result. And at best, it's a win, but it's a big disappointment. The legislation compels manufacturers to make repair parts, tools, and documentation available to the public. And technically, it should open up repair in the state beyond these authorized channels. It covers electronic devices, but it doesn't cover household appliances. And it only covers products bought new at retail from the 1st of July this year. So it's not backdated. Anything you already own doesn't fall under this legislation. And the lobbyists got some huge wins that really turned this into something that you could argue is nearly useless. The big deal is that the legislation allows manufacturers to provide assemblies of parts. So if, for example, your laptop screen fails, you can't necessarily just buy the screen. You have to buy the screen, the surround, the built-in webcam, all the hinges, all the other paraphernalia that goes with it. And a manufacturer under the New York legislation can do that. And they can also charge whatever they want for it. There's nothing in the legislation that says that parts or assemblies have to be provided at a fair price. So it's really up to them how much they want to charge. They can still make repair expensive. And when repair is expensive, we see that repair doesn't generally happen as much as it should. It excludes printed board assemblies. So tech devices are filled with printed board assemblies. So good luck getting any parts or the assemblies for those to replace them. And it gives them a big out as well, which says you don't have to provide anything that bypasses security features. So the argument from big tech, and this is one of the things that they lobby on really hard against right to repair, is that enabling people to repair is a security risk. So they just use that as a reason not to do it. But that was just the first of a few. So in May this year, Minnesota also passed a Digital Fair Repair Act. And this one was a lot better. So this one included home appliances as well as electronic goods. It backdated purchases to 1st of July 2021. So it applied to stuff people already own. It added fair and reasonable terms, and it said that you've got to provide this repair information and repair tools and repair parts within 60 days of the products going on sale. And useful for us as well is that the documentation has to be free of charge. So this opens up a whole ability for manufacturers and for us to access online documentation to help us repair. And that's one of the key barriers to repair, is just knowing what you're going to do. And we've heard it from stories from repair cafes that if you don't know how to get into a product, that's a big barrier. If you've got documentation that shows you the steps to repair, it breaks that down, and it's a great piece of progress for us. And then just last week, hot off the press, California have passed its own Right to Repair Act. And this goes even further. This is the best yet. So this one includes home appliances and electronic goods. It backdates it to 1st of July, same as Minnesota. It says that you have to have access to repair materials, so parts, tools, documentation, and software. And the key thing here is they've defined a period that those have to be available for. And that's based on the product cost. So a product that wholesales for over $100 has to have that information available for 7 years after the product was manufactured. So we're starting to set an actual lifetime for repair on this. 7 years might seem quite short in some cases, but these are minimum standards. So every product over $100 has to have this information available for 7 years. Cheaper products for 3 years, and the really cheap products don't have to do it at all. And the amazing thing here is one of the biggest lobbyists against right to repair, Apple, actually turned around and endorsed this and wrote a letter to the governor of California to say, yeah, no, we support this. And it's a massive turnaround. It took everybody by surprise. A lot of the reaction was, well, maybe they just see that, right to repair has created such a groundswell of support that, the writing's on the wall and we're going to have to support it because it's going to happen anyway. But there are some more nuances to that, I think. It's probably a bit naive to think a company like Apple, that's done so much work to keep this all internal to themselves, is suddenly going to turn around and go, you know what, we were wrong. We should all be repairing stuff. And actually, when you look at their letter, it says that this bill doesn't force them to do too much more than they're already providing through their authorized network. What the bill really does is it says you can't just make this through an authorized network. If you provide this repair service, you have to make that available to independent people and to consumers as well. So whatever they're doing now, they have to make available, and they have to make it available at a fair price. They can't charge you more for it. What they don't have to do is anything too much more. But it's a great start. It's a really great start. So back to here, what does this mean for us? Well, August this year, the Environment Committee heard submissions on the Repair Cafe petition, and it was a really, really positive session. This is probably my opinion as much as anything, but outside of that, I don't think our government's shown much desire at all to enact this legislation. It's a big piece of legislation, and that's what we're learning overseas. And it needs real commitment from government to push it through, because it touches on several different pieces of law. But we can keep pushing, and using the data that we're getting from repair cafes and the support for repairing will always help this case. And I think there are two approaches that we need to actually make this a practical ability to repair more products. Right to repair legislation is essentially a minimum bar. It's saying if you're going to enter this market, if you're going to sell a product in Aotearoa, you need to meet minimum requirements for repair. And that might be that you have to provide documentation and some tools and some parts, and you have to do that at a fair price. And everybody has to do that. But it doesn't say how repairable a product needs to be. There's nothing that compels a manufacturer to make that product easy to repair. They just have to technically make it repairable. What we've seen, and it's been mentioned here earlier, in France, is they've introduced a repairability label, which essentially is measuring repairability. And it's saying, let's take these things apart and we'll give them a score. Easier to repair products get a higher score. Harder to repair products get a lower score. Makes sense. And you have to display that at the point of sale. So when consumers are buying products, they get to see not only the price of the product and all the other marketing information, but they get to see which ones are more repairable. So if repairability is important to me as a consumer, I'll choose one that's more repairable in the future. And by doing that, it encourages producers and manufacturers to compete to make their products more repairable. So the right to repair legislation is super important because that covers a minimum bar for everybody. Then providing a repairability label is the next step, and it provides the means for producers to actually compete and turn it from them having to do this to wanting to do this. And that's sort of where we're pushing as well. So we're pushing for both. We're pushing for the right to repair legislation, but we also think a repairability label is something we can start to do, whether it's legislated or not, to start measuring repairability and showing which of these brands and which of these products are actually more practically repairable in the market.